Welcome back to my channel. I'm Alicia. I like to just do videos on all types of things relating to lifestyle and all that good stuff. So without going into that, if you like the stuff that you see here, please like and subscribe. I'd love to have you coming back. So let's get started. The story time I'm talking about today is last year, 2019, and I'm going to put some photos and stuff up in this video. 2019 in March, we were going on a spring break trip. I have never gone on a spring break trip before, and I was really excited to because we were going to be backpacking, which I also had never done before. But I don't know, I was a senior in college and spontaneous and excited to do all kinds of things, which I still am. And I've just really wanted to do this for so long, and I had the opportunity, so I decided to take it. We live in Ohio, and we were driving to Utah, pretty much straight through, and then straight back after our trip. Our plan starting out was to go to Zion National Park, and then Capitol Reef National Park, and then after that we were gonna go to Arches. So first of all, I do not sleep well in a car or in a van, and there were 11 other people, so there were 12 of us in total. I had never met any of these people, but they were so awesome. They're great people, and I've talked to a lot of them since then. I had never gone backpacking before, really had never gone to any national parks, so it was gonna be some pretty strenuous hiking that I was not really prepared for, but we did fine. And also with 11 other people who I did not know. So that was really exciting as well. We left at like 5 a.m., started driving there. It was such a long trip, and it was really awesome though. We just kind of took turns driving, and I love road trips like that, but because we were doing it in the full, like, I think it was 27 hours straight, it was just really, like, it took a toll on you. It was very difficult because we each had one seat in this small van, seats in the whole entire van, and our backpacking gear was taking up all of the extra space. So there was really nowhere to try to like sleep if you wanted to lay down at all. We got to Zion National Park, which if you have been there before, it is beautiful. It's just mind-blowing. It was definitely my favorite. And the first thing we did is we just did a couple little like hikes around the park, but very short ones, and then we did the Angel's Landing hike. Angel's Landing hike was amazing, horrifying, especially since it was technically my first big hike ever. I definitely just like went for it all. If you know of this hike, they have like chains to hold on to because one side is just a complete cliff, like 1,000 or 2,000 feet down. Very exciting. You should definitely look it up. So we stayed at Zion for, I think it was 2 nights. Did the Angel's Landing hike when we got there, so I was so exhausted because I had not slept, and then we immediately went into the hike, and then we went to bed that night. I tried to eat my meal, but it didn't really work out well because my body was so exhausted and stressed out from everything from the day that it just was not accepting the food. So anyway, we slept, and then the next day we did a 14-mile hike in the Cool Canyons, and we did it in chacos because we thought that we were going to be walking in like knee-high water, and I didn't want to get my boots soaking wet because we were planning to be backpacking the following day, and I knew they wouldn't be dried out yet. The next day after sleeping, we started driving to Capitol Reef National Park. It has a lot less visitors. It's very nice because, you know, you're truly like alone and you don't have a lot of people around you. It's not super like heavily touristy. So we did a backpacking loop, and we were originally going to do a 3-day backpacking loop, but we ended up doing one that took us about 2 days. I think it was 9 miles total. We did the 9 miles. We stayed the night in the canyons and everything. It was just really nice. You know, we all kind of hung out together. The plan was, okay, since we're not doing 3 days backpacking loop in Capitol Reef, let's do the 9-mile backpacking loop, and then we're gonna go hiking in like another section. I truly don't even remember exactly what the hike is that we were gonna do. It was just a day hike. So we'd be setting up camp, doing the hike, and then coming back to camp. Start going down in this canyon. There's like a narrow footpath, and we get to the spot where it just like overlooks. And that's where we set up our camp. So it was so pretty, and like we just kind of took pictures the rest of that night. We were gonna go hiking in the morning, but this whole time we did not have cell phone reception. So I like warned all my family and stuff like, hey, I won't be able to respond for like 3 to 4 days. We didn't have cell phone reception or anything like that. We were like in the middle of nowhere. So we set up our camp, and we like roasted marshmallows and stuff, had like a quick fire or whatever. And then went to bed. We were like, well, maybe it'll rain tomorrow. So if it rains, we need to decide very quickly what we're gonna do. So me and 2 other girls shared a tent, and a lot of the equipment and tents and stuff we rented from the organization. So me and 2 other girls shared the same tent, and it was like, I don't even know, maybe like 3 or 4 in the morning, and I could just like hear it pouring on our tent. And I actually started feeling it seeping through, because our tent was like the worst out of all of them. I mean, it was functional, but it obviously was not working very well as far as keeping the water out. So I kind of like yelled something, and just kind of like seeing with the people in the other tent, like, what should we be doing? Should we be getting out and leaving? Should we stay? We ended up staying until the morning. So didn't get a lot of sleep. Was really worried about all my things being soaking wet. And by morning, I'm assuming it was probably like 7-ish in the morning, we packed up our things. Here's the deal. It was early in the morning and it was still raining. So the biggest part of the storm was past, but it was definitely still coming down. And if you know anything about backpacking, it is not easy to pack up your gear and your tent. I mean, even if you know anything about camping in the rain where things are soaking wet. I mean, my sleeping bag was wet. It was just really frustrating. So anyway, we tried to gather all of our things into our own packs. By the end of it, my pack was just full. My things weren't necessarily packed in it correctly, you know, as far as like carrying it, because our intention was to just get out of that canyon and get to the car so that we can leave, or the van so we could leave. So I had like my day hiking pack hanging off the back of my backpacking pack, words, and just all kinds of stuff hanging off of it because I couldn't get everything in quickly and easily because it was soaking wet. And the like terrain, I guess, that we were camped on and we were walking on was like clay. It was like muck. I don't even know how to explain it. It was just seeping down. So every single time you stepped, you're just adding more weight of muck to your boots. And so I couldn't really fold up things properly because it was all covered in that too. I gathered all my things as best as I could, and then we started hiking up out of the canyon. I just remember it being really, really hard because all the stuff on my pack was just like pulling me backwards while I was trying to go up this super steep hill. Every single step, my boots were just getting heavier and heavier, and they were just filled with this like grayish brown muck. And so eventually we get out of the little canyon, and we're only a few hundred feet from the van where the parking lot is, but it's all like dirt road. So we thought that it was like, okay, good, let's get out of here. So a little short detail about the area we were at. So I did a little screen recording here to kind of give you an idea. So this is around the spot that we had the van parked, and this is all just a dirt road, I guess, that we were on. And then if you like hike down here, you can't tell that it's steep, but it kind of is. And then this is, you can hardly see where the terrain shifts, but this is like the overlook. So this is about where we set up camp in one of those sections. So the van was either parked in this section, or it may have even been parked like right in this little hole area here. And so it's approximate, but we were also like in this section is where we got stuck. So it's got to be within like this little range here. So that's where the van was stuck. So this road is, I don't know, maybe a mile or 2 long. And then it goes off to a T, and it's still a dirt road. So on this section, it was all a dirt path, and that one was probably 2.5 to 3 miles long before it got to the nearest paved road, which you can see there. It kind of connects to that T. And then going back on the other side, the other section is, I think, about 5 miles long. So it's pretty long. So 5 to 6 miles. And then that connects to that same paved road right there. So that's kind of what we were looking at as far as how we were going to get out. That's where we'd have to go. The stuff in the van, I mean, I hope I have the picture of this, but like our shoes were just muddy in the whole back of the van. Like it was like we couldn't even close the doors. So we get in the van and we try to leave, and we get stuck like instantly, like not even 100 feet. We get the van stuck, and we're like, oh crap. Like obviously there was no like 4-wheel drive option, and we didn't have any like tools like chains or any like 2x4s obviously, or anything like that to help us get out. Plus we didn't have cell phone reception at this point, so we didn't really know what the weather was going to look like, but we knew it wasn't going to dry up immediately because we were kind of assuming there was going to be intermittent showers and stuff coming through. So we decided to split our group up into 3 groups because we were also low on water. So at this point we would have been in Utah for about 2 more days before we would be heading home. So we had about that much food left over, and we didn't have a lot of water because when we were backpacking the day before, we had to pump some water. Our filters weren't doing very well. Nobody really stocked up on water because we assumed that we would be getting to some. By the time we got there, we were very low on water. So we were gonna split the groups up. One part of the group, we're gonna go down into the canyon and try to get some water. Another part of the group was going to try to walk to the end of the road we're on and then to the 2.5 mile side from the T to try to get to a paved road to hopefully flag someone down for help. And they were supposed to look for cell phone reception. My group, the one I was in, we were to stay at the van and try to get it out. Along the path that we were stuck on, there was a lot of, I don't even know the names of the plants that were there, but we didn't really want to pull them out because we didn't want to destroy any of the ecosystem or anything. We were also stuck and we did not know what to do. We ended up trying to pull a bunch of the rocks out, and there were a lot of flat rocks and some that maybe wouldn't be that convenient, but something. And then we tried to build a road around the van. I mean, it was just we didn't really know what to do. We didn't have any good equipment to get out. What ended up happening actually is the showers kept coming through, and really it wasn't we needed it to be somewhat dry, or else everything that we're replacing was just going to slide out. So we did a lot of getting things gathered, but not necessarily putting it down yet, and just trying to figure out the best way to do that. Also, within that time, it was hailing, it was raining, so we felt really bad for the people who had gone in the other directions and didn't have any shelter and were just standing out in the hail. By the time they got back that night, we couldn't get the van out still because it was just still very, very wet. The girls came back that night from the canyon with water. They couldn't find anything better, and it was literally chocolate milk. So they had filtered it and everything, but it was opaque. You could not see through it. And I think everybody was kind of oh, I don't really want to drink that unless I absolutely need to. So at this point we had a lot of Ale-8 and Red Bull and stuff that was kind of sponsored for the trip in the van, and I was just drinking that instead of my water because I was conserving it was probably 16 ounces, if that, maybe 10 ounces of water that I had that was somewhat clear from the day before. And then the other group came back, and I think on this point they found cell phone reception, but they didn't have any of our parents' phone numbers or anything like that. They also found out that part of that path had collapsed on the shorter end of the T. So the 2.5 mile, there was a completely collapsed section. It was half of the road, and so no cars could probably get through there, which was good to know. If we were to get out the next day, we would know not to go down that road. Rather, we'd have to go down the longer road. That's kind of where we stood that day. So we were we're not getting out tonight. We need to hopefully wait until it dries up a little bit, work a little harder in the morning. So we set up camp. I actually slept in the van that night because my tent was soaking wet. The water that they found, and we filtered it through a t-shirt as well and boiled it, and then used it for our food that night, and just kind of slept it off, hoping that the next day would be a little better. Morning we woke up, and immediately we started getting to, we're we want to get out of here. We were running out of food. We were thirsty. We didn't have any good water. It was actually getting nerve-wracking at this point. So our plan was that today we would kind of do the same thing, except I think the water group, instead of going to look for more water because we knew what we had found, they were going to help us try to get the van out. And then we sent a group going to the road again in the same path because they had found cell phone reception. So we gave them all our parents' cell phone numbers so that they could send them just basically this one simple text to every parent. I also wanted to just note in here that another group was supposed to be bringing us supplies at this point. So we were trying to get in contact with them too, saying hey, this is what's going on. This is what's happening. We don't have reception, but we'll let you know when we get an update. Really, that ended up triggering something, which I'll probably brief on again later, but In short, all the moms started like contacting National Park Service. So go moms. Anyway, we worked really, really hard that day trying to get the van out. That day, it was like there's still a tiny bit of rain coming through, but for the most part, it was sunny and things were drying up. But this was in March, so even though it was kind of warm, it still wasn't 100-degree sun, like just drying everything up. It still was taking so long and nothing was really stiffening up as far as the mud, but we decided to just keep trying to work. So we got the jack out and they jacked up the back wheels, because at this point, if you tried to press the gas in the car, the wheels were just spinning because it was just too soft. We were like, well, maybe if we can like get the jack and kind of try to lift it as much as we can get some rocks underneath those wheels and like in that ditch that it had dug. Now, mind you, the ground was really, really soft, so we had to build a base just for the jack to sit on. We were super careful about that. Just continued gathering a bunch of rock, and at this point we actually started pulling out some of the like bushes. They were weird. They didn't have like leaves on them. They were just these like spidery bushes. Like add something to the mud so that it's not as, so it has less place to run, it dries easier, and so that it'd be a better foundation for like rock as well. So just as extra traction. That was horrible because not only were we sitting there lifting a bunch of heavy rock, and I mean, we kept having to get farther away from the van as we started collecting all the rocks closer to the van. So we had to pull those out with our hands, and we didn't really have gloves or anything, and they had these needles on them, so it was just, our hands were kind of messy by the end. We kept doing that. At one point I actually stepped away because I was like, I just need a little break. So I walked down the path that we were on, and I probably walked like 150 to 200 feet, and I heard a sound from my phone. So I like pulled my phone out of my pocket, and I remember I had 1 bar of service. So I immediately started getting a bunch of texts, and I called my mom and kind of gave her an update on how I just found service. And she was telling me that she was being in contact with the National Park Service and trying to get us help. So I ended up calling my boyfriend because he had texted me multiple times, because at that point he was expecting a response by me. So he hadn't really heard about anything and was really nervous about it. So I called him and like gave him an update, and obviously told everybody else like, hey, I have Verizon and I have service here. So if you want to try, or if you want to use my phone, then you can. That was kind of like a quick morale boost, because we're like, okay, we're in touch with someone. I was like, well, I'm gonna go keep working, and then I'll come back here shortly and call my mom again. So we kept working at it, and I think that we were still waiting on the other part of the group to get back, because they would have been texting our parents at this point. We did eventually get the van out of the ditch we were in, but it was like, the part we were in was like this, right? And then there's like a slight hill right after it. Not much of a hill at all. I mean, it was barely an incline, but it was high ground. And so we didn't want to keep going, because we knew that ahead there was going to be more mud spots just like that. So our strategy at this point was to wait it out as much as we can, let it dry up as much as we can, and then go back to it maybe even the next day. But we didn't want to dig into that muddy area premature, because it could end up drying up enough the next day to get through. We didn't know. We ended up learning later that it probably would have taken days to dry up just enough to even get through. Waited it out. I think I called my mom back. She said that she talked to the National Park Service, I think an hour before this, and she said that they were sending a state trooper or sheriff or something out to get us, or at least to try to get us, and that they were expecting him to be there within an hour or two. So we were at this point being like, okay, well, we should be expecting Pop to get back here, and we kind of just chilled out because we were just waiting for things to dry up. And at this point, I think the other guys had just recently come back or were about to come back. So we kind of gave them the update as well. Eventually, it was almost dark, and a police officer did end up coming, and he had told us that he might be staying the night with us because he had trouble getting back there in his 4-wheel drive vehicle and doesn't know if we'll be able to get out. What we did from here is actually, the 9 girls, we stayed behind and we set up camp because we were expecting to maybe need to stay there another night. We made dinner and stuff, and we actually just watched the stars, which was really cool because I've never been somewhere where there's so many stars to see. It actually ended up getting really late. Everybody was like, okay, maybe we should just go to bed, because I'm assuming they're gonna be coming back super late. And what ended up happening is around 11:30, I woke up because 2 of the guys had come back and were like yelling at us like, hey, we need to get out of here now. we're stuck again. So we gathered up all the stuff and had to basically backpack out of there, which we were expecting it to be another like 7 miles or so that we were gonna have to backpack out of there. So we got out of our stuff and started going off there with the guys, and they were explaining like the experience they had and how they kept getting stuck, and they got stuck multiple times, walking in the dark with our headlamps. And we finally get to the van, and turns out they got out, and we were so excited. At this point, we were also waiting on, when the guys got cell phone reception, they had contacted another group that went to Utah, and those guys were going to be bringing us food and water for just like a couple more days in case we were stuck there. So they actually had met up with them in the midst of trying to get the van out, and so we had like chips and water. It was like the most exciting thing in the world when we all got in the van, and we're just covered in mud, and like the whole entire van was just gross because all the past couple of days we had just been getting it muddy trying to get it out, and just walking in it, and mud tracked through it entirely. And so it was pretty wild. And like honestly, through a lot of it I wasn't sure like when we were gonna get out of there, so I was like, we could be stuck here for a week with like limited food and water. And that was the concerning part of it, because especially when the cop got there and he was like, yeah, I might not be able to get you guys out, we might be staying here for a few days. So it was seriously a crazy experience, and I laugh about it now, and I think it's, even when I tell the story now, it doesn't really like explain the fear that I had, but it was actually really scary because we had no idea where we were, we had no idea what to do, and in the moment it was crazy. But now it's like, oh, I love this story when I'm like in an interview or something, and it's like, oh, let me tell you about working together as a team. Not exactly how I had planned, and we didn't get to go to Arches, which was sad, but also I feel like I wouldn't trade that experience now because I learned so much from it, and ended up to be really fun and hilarious after the fact. It was really interesting. So that's my story time, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Let me know if any of you have ever been stuck, because I'm always like, I don't think this is that unusual. Like, I feel like this stuff happens in national parks all the time. I mean, luckily that was the worst of it for us, you know. Luckily we didn't have anyone get hurt or anything like that, and so obviously that would have been the biggest concern. So yeah, that's story time. Thank you for listening.